In that first sentence of the first reading today from Ephesians, St. Paul tells us, you are no longer strangers and sojourners, strangers and aliens. But sometimes we feel that way, perhaps, living in the world, trying to be a Christian, living in the world. Sometimes we might feel like a stranger or an alien. And that can get us down, perhaps, even. Thinking, well, what's the point? Why bother? Right? But I think we come to that because we lose sight of the bigger picture. Right? We lose sight of the big picture. And I think that's what St. Paul is trying to get at here. Right? The text is a little choppy there. It's unfortunately, it should have had some more verses in front of it to have it make a little bit of sense. Right? Because what's he talking about? He's talking about Gentiles. Right? And which is, I'm assuming, just about everybody, if not everybody here today. Right? We come from the Gentile tradition. Right? And think about that for a minute, right? So the world begins, Adam and Eve, what do? They sin, they get thrown out of the garden, right? So things get messed up. Why? Because of sin, right? Cain slews Abel, right? Cain gets banished even further, invents the city, right? Where all kind of sin happens, right? And then the people of the world all get together and say, hey, we can be as good as God. Let's build a big tower. And God says, nah, I don't think so. Right? Knocks it all down, scatters these people, and now we're spread all over the place, different languages, different cultures, all hate one another. Right? And that gets all messed up. Right? And it really gets messed up, and God says, I'm getting rid of the whole lot of you except for Noah. Noah built a boat, right? Again, off he goes, right? And the world gets reduced down to this one lot, right? And they start the project all over again. Plan B, human beings 2.0, right? And that gets all messed up, right? And then, this is the important part, then God says, okay, Abraham, he picks one guy out of the entire world, right? There was nothing special about Abraham, necessarily. Okay, Abraham, you're the man. I'm going to build my chosen people on you and your family. And of course, Abraham's like an old guy, right? It's like, yeah, that's kind of funny. And Sarah thinks that's really funny. But we know what happens, right? But even then, there's the slave girl and Sarah, and they both have a kid, and those people hate one another, and they still do hate one another. Right? And indeed, that's where we come from, right? Right? Gentiles, and there's these chosen people. Right? And we forget that we are reconnected to them. That's a very simple thing, but it's profound, right? That there is this part of history where there is this chosen people. And why were they chosen? Not because there was any great merit on their part. Right? They come from a long line of really sinful people. And indeed, even after they're the chosen people, they do all kinds of rotten things. Right? As Jesus will point out, you all killed all the prophets. Any prophet worth his name was killed because he was too challenging to the status quo. Right? So these chosen people don't look terribly chosen, but they're still God's chosen people. And the point of the exercise is that out of that comes the Messiah, right? Who will give his life to bring all this mess back together again. And that's the point, right? To bring it all back together again. Because human beings, left to their own devices, will just continue to divide it up to thinner and thinner slices. Right? Look at the world we live in today. Look how tribal it is. That's a good word, I think. Right? Because my tribe hates your tribe hates my tribe, and increasingly the tribes are getting smaller. Right? We're on this self-destructive path to oblivion. But the good news is Jesus came into the world to bring it all back together again. Right? So that there is no Gentile and Jew. Right? And there's, no slave and free, no Greek or Roman, no male or female. We're all united through the Paschal mystery of Christ. And that's success, right? The degree to which we participate in that is a measure of the success of Jesus' mission in a certain sense. To bring it all back together again, to be united. And then Paul gives us, in the last part of that reading, an interesting architectural metaphor, right? That Christ is, the body of Christ is the temple. What is a temple? Temple's where God lives, right? There was the temple in Jerusalem, existed for 600-700 years, right? It's where the chosen people believed that God dwelt in this world, right? And it's destroyed. Why? Well, there's all kind of reasons, political reasons, all that business. We won't go there, right? But with the coming of Christ, you don't need a physical temple anymore. Don't need a building. We are the temple, right? With Jesus as the capstone, holding it all together, right? Look at those arches out here, right? Pull that top stone out of it and see what happens to the rest of the arch. It's not going to last. A temple, the body of Christ, and we are the stones that build it up. And all people, Jesus did what Jesus did to invite all people to be a stone in the temple. We are all called to be a part of the body of Christ. Indeed, that is the whole point of the human experiment. Right? That is the point of our lives. It's to be a part of the body of Christ, because that is the only way out of here. That is the way to salvation. Right? To restore all the division that we human beings have inflicted upon each other and the world. This is the way forward, and indeed, the only way forward. And today, Paul reminds us of that. And that's the value of the apostles, right? Because these guys were, were very brave. Right? And we know, according to tradition, that all the apostles, except for one, ended as martyrs, right? St. Simon and Jude, we don't know very much about them historically, but the tradition tells us that they went out, both ended up in Persia, of all places, preaching the gospel to who? To Gentiles. Right? What was Paul's mission? Preach the gospel to the Gentiles. Right? To build that temple, to restore what was broken from the very beginning of time. Right? And we are the beneficiaries of that. Right? God so loved the world that God sent God's only Son, right, to restore what was broken because of sin. Right? And we all are a stone in that body of Christ. We are all a stone in that temple of God. Right? And hopefully we seek, and that's good news, right? Because the tribalism of our world is dark. It's like it's all a mess. It's all going to hell in a handbasket, right? And there's no answers. Just tear it all down. Right? The Christian message is a message of hope. It's a message of hope. And we are the beneficiaries of that again because of the apostles. So we give thanks to God for the gifts of St. Simon and Jude and all the apostles and all those who have continued to be faithful to their teaching and witness, the revelation of Christ through them. Because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for them, we would not be a part of the body of Christ. And for that today, we celebrate Eucharist. We give thanks.